And primarily it's the timing that I oppose so much. And I think that ultimately we may have to do this. But I've made my position pretty clear that I don't intend this year to support such a thing. And I do very much resent what I consider to be an overt tactic on the part of Dr. Benton to opportunistically make the architect study available at the time that the legislature is in a posture of deciding how to spend the natural gas tax.
All that is attempted here is to imply that this woman must have all of this information to be disseminated in a punitive measure, so that she must feel guilty about the fact that she cannot afford or is not capable physically, psychologically, or financially to support an offspring, should that be a normal one. Thank you.
In the car, leave dry.
place one time in July. What do you think?
Oh, I think.
Well, Hammon is down to the basics. And it'll probably cost the people that shop here a little more money eventually. But it won't be a dead town just because of the railroad. It'll cut the economy at least 25%. What I mean by that is it's going to cost the merchants a little more money, maybe on a lot of things, to get the merchandise in here, and they'll pass it on to the consumer.
Like you?
Like poor little old me, yeah.
Oh, pretty good.
Do what? Leave?
I guess he said there's no doubt.
Get that position I accepted. All there.
And he said he's gonna have an office on Saturday. So I believe he would. So he's gonna try to deal with him on both.
Yeah, good.
When you say public interest, you're talking about the citizenry of the United States at large, as opposed to 3 or 4 shippers at Hammon. I feel sorry for these people. We wish we could continue, or hope we can continue to serve them. But basically, it's a drain on interstate commerce. The rate of return for the railroad industry in 1975 was 1.2% on invested capital. I submit that that is hardly profiteering at any rate, and this small branch line, to keep it up to operating standards, simply costs more than it generates in revenue.
Unit 986 to the yard office. Go ahead, bud.
Suddenly the track looks terrific. This is how we've been looking at all morning.
How far it is from rear end?
from there if those ties were all bad as they are. 72. Right. Taking care of that. This is not balanced.
What is it you're looking for on the line? A place like this.
Well, the condition of the ties. We're looking at, what do you want to
The rules of this game have been changed. Now, if a railroad branch line is put up for abandonment and the shippers want to keep the line going, the Interstate Commerce Commission is likely to arrange a scheme whereby the financial responsibility and the financial risk will be borne by the shippers and the local communities themselves. What this has a tendency of doing, of course, is making the public treasury available to the railroads in the case that they can abandon the line. Consequently, the incentives for railroads to get rid of lines which are showing a loss or a near loss have been tremendously heightened.
Under the law, of course, it was supposed to make a tremendous change in the abandonment procedure. To date, we haven't seen any great relaxation of the. In other words, we're just not allowed to cut off service. We still have to go through public hearings. The ICC makes the final decision. At one point, the ICC tried to establish a standard figure for abandonment of branch lines, 32 cars originating per mile per year. That didn't even fly. So we still have the burden of proof on the carrier to show that it is a drain on interstate commerce.
You don't feel that there is a certain incentive now for the railroads to abandon the branch lines?
The incentive has been there all along. It's simply that they were not paying their own way. The incentive has not changed. So I don't see where that would have any effect whatsoever on it.
I sincerely believe that we're going too far if our federal government allows many branch lines of railroads to be abandoned because they have become deteriorated. I don't think that is the answer to retaining the railroad service, which is vitally needed by our agricultural community and our industrial community. We must have the branch lines, the feeder lines, to feed the mainline sections, or we're going to see a drastic reduction in the mainline traffic.
It's our conception and our experience indicates that while we do not get the traffic at Hammon, we will get the transcontinental move at another location, whether it be out of Enid, Woodward, someplace else along the main line. The simple fact is that our experience has shown that while it does take a change in the local elevator's mode, he eventually moves it anyway, and generally we're going to handle most of the export stuff. Well, I think we have to look at our priorities on a national basis. We have been preaching this in the industry for years, that Congress must come up with a unified national transportation policy, looking at the economic benefits of all modes, whether it be air, water, or trucks and rail, and establish some priorities as to where they put their funds. The CAB, for instance, is strictly interested in airlines and does a great deal of promotion work, subsidizing work, that type of thing. The Corps of Engineers are the, let's say, the godfathers of the inland waterways. The truck building lobbies, the highway building lobbies, the truckers and this, that, and the other, they want all that stuff in the general highway fund to stay there. And we feel that through this, while it may not be a direct subsidy to those people, it's certainly a subsidy enough to that it has been detrimental to the rail industry, and results largely in the fact that the railroad industry as we know it is no longer strong enough to stand on its own legs.
The Rick Talifero family had plenty of help this morning from friends and relatives sifting through what was left of their mobile home. About 8:30 last night, a storm rolled through this area just southeast of Lawton. What was believed to have been a tornado destroyed the Talifero home and either destroyed or damaged about 15 other trailers and houses in the area between Pumpkin Center and Marlowe. About 25 barns and outbuildings were also damaged by the storm. No injuries were reported. The Taliferos, like many other families in the area, had gone into storm shelters when the severe weather moved in. Damage in Stevens and Comanche counties could run over the $300,000 mark. But even though the damage is extensive, no one was killed. And dollars can't be compared to the value of life. Ron Turner, Channel 4 News, Pumpkin Center, Oklahoma.
Yep. Exactly. No, she is. He's
that comes out with 25 pounds of 296. It's like for a while.
Not so to speak.
It looks very bad for mountain gorillas, actually, because these two that we have up until this morning seemed like the most likely pair to produce offspring. And at this point there is only maybe another one or two combinations of male and females, and one of these is an immature pair, so we're looking at 4 or 5 years maybe as far as offspring produced by them. It's just a very bad outlook for mountain gorillas.
Sit down, somebody. You gotta go up there again.
I am going to continue to urge the legislature, and I think our chances are better now with the funds which are available, to go ahead and fund the full architectural study. I'm very hopeful that we can do it. We've made so much progress, and I think the judge himself has indicated in some public statements that he's pleased with the amount of progress that we've made and the good faith efforts we've had in the past. I would hate to see us slide back now.
My present attitude is to take the position that we have provided an adequate budget for corrections. It may take a redetermination of priorities. It may take even a reallocation of funds in that budget. But as of this time, based on what I know right now, I am not in favor of putting any more into corrections. I think we have put as much money as this state can afford in that area.
But Bohannon says if you don't start doing something, he's going to shut down the doors at McAllister and Granite.
That'll be up to the judge. That's his job. We have our job to do, and our job right now is to appropriate what we feel is sufficient in the different areas, and I think that amount is sufficient. And we have other critical needs other than the prisoners, and I want to take care of some of those other needs out of this other money.
Well, it'll mean that almost every employer and every employment in the state of Oklahoma is covered by workers' compensation. I think the legislature has clearly indicated this year, time and time again, that they don't want that broad coverage, and as far as I'm concerned, there's been a sufficient legislative statement that that's what we ought to try to accomplish, and that's what we'll try to accomplish with this bill. As it presently states, if the bill stays as it is, what we will do, we'll go back to the narrow coverage, but we will retain all of the rest of the reform bill that was adopted last year.
We don't need this legislation. If you're for regulating abortion, we've passed 1813 and 1814, and we've got the regulation. We've cleaned up the practices, the medical practices, whatever. That's done. If you're for informed consent, we've got legislation that addresses that. We've got statutory authority that requires informed consent for any medical procedure. We've got it. If you want to have a procedure that has to do with what minors can or can't do with regard to medical services, that is on the books. There is no way that a minor can get medical services for birth control or pregnancy problems without the parent's consent. That's on the books. But the problem is that this legislation is unnecessary, it is excess baggage, it is an invasion of privacy, it is unconstitutional, and I urge you, please, please defeat this bill.
Well, they're going to have to take care of the children. And it'll take more than $500,000 to take care of the children that are brought into the area as a result of the GM plant. And I'm still of the opinion that the GM officials will consider the need at that appropriate time and increase the payment.
The legislators, the elected officials who have made statements with respect to the city of Faith are generally uninformed. The cost, again, to consumers, to individuals who are taxpayers, to individuals who pay for private health insurance premiums, to employers who pay for group health insurance premiums, those costs are hidden. And legislators and elected officials are not well aware of the technical aspects of the decision that they may be called upon to make.
I'm not supporting the treaties on the basis of being afraid of the Panamanians or concerned about the Civil War, but I am concerned that if we got into a situation down there where we needed to take an extensive military action to keep the canal open, that it might prove to be very unpopular with a lot of American people, and we might wind up in a situation where our military wouldn't have the political support they need to do their job.
Floor leader.
And Mr. Speaker,
there have been various publications coming out claiming that this would put the utilities out of business and so forth, and a lot of it is just flat propaganda, that nobody wants to put the utilities out of business, but the utility lobby is almost paranoid over this bill, that they have some practices that need to be stopped, and this new board is given the power to get into the books of the utility companies so that we can assure whatever utility rates come out are fair rates, and at the same time guarantee a fair return to the utilities.
You had a good chance to pass a conflict of interest bill out here that had some teeth in it and that meant something. Instead of coming with a bunch of baloney like this that's going to require a bunch of people to file some reports and that's all it's going to do, there's nothing in here with any teeth in it. And if you'll read the bill, you'll see what I'm talking about, if you'll read it in its entirety.
This is not a great big tiger of a bill that's going to tear anybody up, but it's not completely toothless either. For the first time in the history of Oklahoma, under the provisions of this bill, you will have the executive branch and the judicial branch of government covered by some regulation on lobbying. They've never been covered before. The legislature has covered itself by its own rules, but these other branches of government have never been covered. For the first time, they're going to be covered. For the first time under the provisions of this bill, I think you will find that everybody who lobbies is going to have to register as a lobbyist.
Late this afternoon, agents of the FBI discovered a grave site here in Logan County, and we brought in agents from OSBI, and the Logan County Sheriff's Office assisted us, and District Attorney Hedrick arrived on the scene, and we excavated the grave site and found the remains of a body. It had been there apparently for some time, and the remains were removed by the medical examiner's office and transported to Oklahoma City, where they'll attempt to make an identification from dental charts and medical records.
If we fail to act on this bill, I think it will be a real tragedy for all parts of the state of Oklahoma. It's going to be a tragedy for eastern Oklahoma because it will mean that we are going to continue with 1/3 of the people residing in that part of the state without funds to develop adequate water delivery systems to their homes and to their places of work. It's going to be a tragedy for central and western Oklahoma because it will keep us on high center in terms of long-term water development for those areas, and it will cause us to face a critical shortage within the next 25 years of some 300 million gallons of water per day within that 25-year period.
Mr. Hood's recognized. Mr. Hood's recognized.
We spent a lot more time worrying about how Anita Bryant felt about certain things that we had in our laws, rather than worrying about how we can teach our children to read and how we can teach our special education children to develop their educational skills. And this bothers me. I think we have to take the leadership position
the people in the caucus, the members, more viewed it as not only was it so that it was harmful to come, but it was just it was not the proper function of a national committeeman to be out doing this sort of thing to the detriment of Republican candidates. If he could get involved with that particular race, he could get involved against any Republican candidate, including us, and that's something that none of us would like.
Senator Bartlett's main consideration was that probably as national committee man I shouldn't have said this. He did not disagree with my assessment. In fact, he said that in 1969 he had tried to get David Boren to change to a Republican, and in 1973 he suggested that David Boren run on the Republican ticket. And in fact, even today, he considers David Boren a conservative, and he told me in the conversation that I could say this.
Nobody's really told the institutions what we want them to be over the long haul, what we want them to be next year and what we want them to be 5 years from now. So we're still leaving them in a very peculiar position. We're still asking them to be all things to all people, and we're still criticizing them as though they should be all things to all people. I think that's probably unfair both to the patients who have to get their care there and also to the people who work there, because I think you're saying institutional personnel really being abused in the sense that no one has really said, this is what we want you to do and this is how we're going to judge you.
We haven't been given time to know whether we really did the right thing or the wrong thing. But I say that what we're doing today is considering a bill that will take us, if we override the governor's veto, will take us right back where we were before. And we knew then, and we know now, that that was not satisfactory.
Looks like this whole session long we've been trying our best to make our governor United States Senator, but I'm not willing to do it at the expense of the people of Oklahoma for in the sum of $10 million when we don't have any adequate engineering studies to show whether we have the lifting cost. It's going to cost lots of money to lift that water all the way from eastern Oklahoma to western Oklahoma.
We're not going to, under this bill, build any kind of massive program such as is being paraded before you here today. This simply gives us the opportunity, perhaps, to do something about the unemployment rate in Pittsburgh County, where they lost a rather sizable industry because they were not able to develop their own water resources. It gives us that kind of small step.
Unfortunately, a lot of people think the quickest way to solve your problem is adding more people to the payroll. Or, you know, if somebody has a problem in a particular office or department, oh, we need more people all of a sudden. That's not always the solution. Why should we have more people doing this? Why should we add, again, other divisions to the state payroll? I think we have a big enough state payroll at this point. I don't want to see it grow any further.
In providing us with this forum and with this opportunity to present our case, as it were, to this august news directors of Oklahoma. And I would like to explain that Sigma Delta Chi, what happens in this courtroom at the request of 4 professional journalists.
What I'm saying is, if we're going to make the financial responsibility of one or more defendants an issue, let's do it from the very start. Let's tell the jury. Let's tell the jury that Mr. Watson is loaded with insurance coverage and Mr. Ashton is not.
I think the important thing that we need to stress in this case, the very important thing, is that the law in the state of Oklahoma, as well as all jurisdictions that I know, say that a person may receive compensation for injuries due to the negligence that is a proximate cause of his damages.
The approach we use in liking it.
We do. To expect a return in many others.
Both before and after the fact. Pictures of handcuffs with a minimum of effort and a minimum of...
That a jury found the plaintiff was negligent. On behalf of a claimant or plaintiff would not. The statute, the law was very clear If the jury rises, as in this case, where we have multiple defendants.
The presence of the camera, and through the camera the people, tends to, if anything, raise the level of the participation in that event. That people are aware that the community is watching, and that this has a beneficial effect. And I think it can be done in such a way, and as we've demonstrated here, that it really doesn't affect the outcome of the case.
I also object, and perhaps it is because I am a lawyer, or was a lawyer, to while the judge is saying something, to having some damn television reporter telling me what the judge said. I am intelligent enough to know what that person says. Now, I object to that.
To provide copies of what happens in this courtroom to all of the individual representatives of the media would be a typical issue that this end of the proceedings. At the end of that trial, we would like to play back that videotape for you so that you could see exactly